Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're a sailor stepping aboard the Santa Maria, proud to wear the colours of Spain, and certain that faith, sails, and courage will carry you to fortune. You will cheer with the crowd as the anchors rise, laugh with your shipmates beneath the summer sky, and never imagine how quickly hunger, filth, and despair will grind that pride into silence. Before we leave the harbour and push west into the unknown, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. It's August 1492. The streets reek of sweat, spice and celebration, a mixture of festival and farewell. Crowds press close to the harbour, their voices carrying like a hymn for empire, and you stand in the throng as though swept along by a tide larger than yourself. Priests lift their hands in benediction, incense drifting in thin coils above the heat, while Columbus speaks of glory, of gold, of a promised land that waits somewhere beyond the endless water. His words are polished, confident, as if every coin and crumb of treasure is already counted in his palm. You cannot see the edge of the horizon from where you stand, only the coloured banners flapping in the summer air and the restless shifting of sailors waiting for orders. For a moment, you believe him. It is impossible not to when so many voices cheer in unison, when the drums strike a rhythm meant to echo triumph, when children climb onto their fathers' shoulders to glimpse history in the making. You feel the push of bodies against you, men shouting, women weeping, hawkers trying to sell their wares before the ships depart. The harbour is a carnival of sound, the pounding of boots on planks, the creak of ropes straining against wooden posts, the caw of gulls circling overhead. Every sense is assaulted at once, and yet the chaos seems to funnel toward a single point. The three ships, two nimble caravels and the heavier carrack, riding low in the water, each of them destined to carry Spain's hopes across the Atlantic. The Santa Maria, broad and cumbersome, waits like a floating fortress at the centre. The Pinta and the Nina, sleeker and smaller, hover beside her, like younger brothers eager for mischief. Sailcloth lies furled along their yards, pale against the blinding sky, and flags of Castile and Aragon hang proud and heavy in the still air. Somewhere behind you, a preacher declares that God himself wills this venture, that to deny Columbus is to deny Providence. You do not argue. You are not here to argue. You are here because you want to believe that history has room for you. The crowd surges as boarding begins. Columbus and his officers are announced with pomp, their fine boots clapping on the planks as though each step were worth its weight in gold. Their uniforms are spotless, their hair trimmed, their movements careful but certain. You are not among them. You shuffle forward in the line of sailors, men whose names will never be recorded, hands rough with work, backs bent from years of lifting more than they should. The air grows heavier with the smell of pitch, salt and tar, the odours of ships that promise both freedom and confinement. Ahead, the gangplank rattles as men before you shuffle onto the Santa Maria, shoulders hunched beneath sacks and tools, curses muttered in half a dozen dialects of Spain and beyond. You keep your eyes forward, pretending that your stomach is not twisting with nerves, pretending that you're part of the pageantry, rather than just another replaceable body. When your turn comes, you grip the railing and feel the roughness of the wood beneath your palm. The ship seems to breathe beneath you, timbers shifting, water slapping against her hull with a rhythm older than empire. The gangplank sways with each step. your balance caught between land and sea, certainty and the unknown. Behind you, the crowd roars louder, pressing encouragement into your back, whether you want it or not. Ahead, the deck waits, cramped, uneven, littered with coils of rope and barrels of supplies. Men are already staking their claims to small patches of space, dropping bundles into corners, stringing up hammocks where they think they will not be kicked in the night. The officers bark orders, their voices sharp enough to cut through the din, and sailors scramble to obey, each of them eager to avoid notice, even as they carry the weight of history on their shoulders. You step onto the deck and feel the shift beneath your boots, the realization that land has already begun to retreat. The harbour sounds louder from the ship, as though the water amplifies every cheer and cry. Women shout last farewells, some with tears streaking down their faces, some with bitter curses for the men who leave them behind. Children wave scraps of cloth, little hands frantic with excitement. Merchants push through the throng, still trying to sell fish, bread, and charms to ward off the dangers of the sea. A priest walks along the quay with a cross held high, murmuring blessings that scatter like gulls in the wind. The officers stand straighter at the sight of him, nodding solemnly, while the common sailors cross themselves hurriedly, muttering prayers that no one will remember. You wonder if God truly listens to the thousands of voices clamouring at once, or if he, like the sea itself, remains silent and indifferent. But you cross yourself too, because no one dares to leave without it. Columbus moves about the deck, his presence magnetic. He speaks of short voyages, of favourable winds, of lands bursting with gold and spices waiting to be claimed in Spain's name. His voice cuts through the air with certainty, the kind of certainty that does not leave room for doubt. He smiles when he speaks of riches, narrows his eyes when he speaks of rivals, lifts his chin when he names God as his witness. The sailors murmur approval, some eager, some merely pretending, but the sound of agreement swells all the same. You nod along because it's easier than resisting, because perhaps you do believe him in this moment. The sun gleams on the water, the sails loom above like wings, and for a fleeting instant, the promise of glory feels tangible, as though you could pluck it from the air like fruit. The final supplies are loaded, barrels of wine and water, sacks of grain, bundles of salted meat, coils of rope, and chests of tools. Animals bleat in protest as they are herded aboard, their eyes rolling nervously as though they too understand the strangeness of leaving land. Sailors push and shove, trying to stow everything in the cramped spaces below deck, the air already thick with the mingled smells of livestock, tar, and human sweat. Shouts rise from every direction, orders to haul, to tie, to lift, to stow. The ship becomes a hive of motion, each man moving in practiced rhythm, each order repeated until it rings in your ears. Your back already aches from the weight of crates, your palms sting from rope, but you keep at it, because hesitation earns nothing but a sharp rebuke, and perhaps worse. The sun climbs higher, beating down on the crowded deck until sweat runs freely into your eyes. The harbour water stinks of rot and fish, the cries of gulls shrill enough to pierce through any thought. Yet above the discomfort hovers excitement, a crackling energy that binds the sailors together in anticipation. Men slap each other on the shoulders, boasting of the riches to come, swearing that they will return as lords, not labourers. Some laugh too loudly, their bravado covering nerves. Others fall quiet, lost in private fears they will not admit aloud. You watch them, and you recognise yourself among them, proud, nervous, uncertain, and unable to turn back. At last the orders are given to raise the anchors. The drums beat again, slower now, each strike like a heartbeat pulsing through the deck. Ropes groan, chains clatter, and the sails unfurl above you with a snap that fills your chest with both dread and awe. The crowd on the quay roars one final cheer, voices breaking against the wind as the ships ease away from the dock. The gap between land and water widens slowly, agonizingly, until the lines are cast off and the sea takes full possession of you. You glance back at the city, its towers gleaming in the sun, its streets alive with people waving, its bells tolling as if to sanctify the voyage. The sails catch the wind with a heavy sigh, and the ships begin to move in earnest, their prows slicing into the water like blades. You grip the railing, the salt spray cool against your face, and for the first time you taste the vastness of the ocean that lies ahead. The air is thick with cheers, with the smell of tar and brine, with the pounding of your own heart. Every creak of wood, every snap of canvas, every roll of the hull reminds you that you have left the certainty of land behind. The coastline fades into a smudge of colour on the horizon until it is swallowed altogether, and in that moment you feel pride in being part of something larger than yourself, pride in the thought that you're stepping into history. With land gone from sight, your attention turns fully to the 3 vessels chosen to bear Spain's grand hopes: the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Niña. To the untrained eye, they might seem sturdy, confident, well suited to their task, but you are not far into your first day at sea before you realise how small, how fragile, and how crowded these ships truly are. The Santa Maria, your home for this voyage, is the largest, though largest is generous. She is broad, heavy, built for cargo rather than speed, her deck packed tight with barrels, bundles, livestock, and sailors with nowhere else to stand. She lists slightly with every shift of wind or wave, her timbers groaning as though already tired. The smell of pitch and tar clings to her planks, sticky in the heat, while the ropes hum faintly like taut strings when the sails snap overhead. Above the deck rise the high stern castle and forecastle, towers of wood that make her look grander than she feels when you're pressed shoulder to shoulder with men who have nowhere to move. She may be the flagship, but she is also a floating barn, part barracks, part warehouse, and part prison. The Pinta sails alongside, smaller, leaner, quicker on the water. She seems almost to dart ahead whenever the wind favours her, her hull cutting cleaner through the waves. Men aboard her shout and laugh more often, perhaps because their lighter vessel responds more eagerly than the lumbering Santa Maria. They are visible across the swells, their figures darting about the rigging like ants on a stick. You imagine their voyage will be easier, though later you will learn that easier at sea is a matter of degree, not comfort. For now you only envy the speed with which she seems to dance forward, leaving your heavy ship to drag behind. The Niña trails on the opposite side, the smallest of the 3. Her deck is low, her hull narrow, and she seems swallowed by the swells around her. Yet sailors claim she is the most reliable, the sturdiest, the one that will see landfall even if the others falter. Her name itself, the girl, makes her seem diminutive, almost laughably so, but she carries herself with surprising grace. You catch glimpses of the men aboard her, their faces browned from earlier voyages, their movements calm, seasoned. They look less like dreamers and more like survivors, and perhaps that is what a sailor should aim to be. Between the 3 ships stretches a triangle of hope and desperation, fragile woods scattered across a limitless ocean. You explore your new home with cautious steps, claiming a patch of space below deck, where you will sling your hammock. The air there is stifling, thick with the mingled scents of wood, damp cloth, and unwashed bodies. Cargo crowds every corner, barrels of salted meat and dried fish, sacks of flour, casks of wine and water, cages of chickens clucking nervously. Rats skitter boldly along the beams, fat from feeding on crumbs and grain. Their presence does not alarm the veterans, who shrug and say a ship without rats is a ship that will sink. You try to take comfort in this odd superstition, though the sight of their twitching whiskers and darting eyes does little to soothe you. You string your hammock between 2 beams, adjusting it awkwardly, hoping it will hold your weight. It swings like a toy when the ship rocks, but for now it is yours, and that small claim feels important. On deck, the noise is constant. Men shout orders, ropes creak, sails snap, and gulls cry overhead until the shoreline is too far away for them to follow. The planks beneath your feet groan with every step, warm from the sun and sticky with salt. Barrels roll slightly with the motion, thumping against one another until wedges are shoved beneath them. The cook has already set up his brazier, smoke rising sharp and acrid from damp wood, the smell cutting through the brine-soaked air. The officers stride about with stiff importance, their boots polished, their voices loud enough to remind you who commands here. Columbus himself appears often, surveying his flagship with the air of a man who has already won, his gaze fixed westward, as though land lies just beyond the next swell. His presence draws murmurs of respect and resentment in equal measure, but no one dares to challenge him, not yet. The men are a patchwork of faces, dialects and tempers. Some are veterans of other voyages, their skin leathered by sun and salt, their movements efficient, their patience thin. Others are green, pressed into service by poverty or misfortune, their eyes wide, their steps uncertain, their hands raw from new blisters. You fall somewhere between, not the most seasoned, not the most naive, simply another body filling space. Names blur quickly, there are too many, and voices shout over one another. Friendships are not yet formed, only alliances of convenience as men jostle for the best hammocks, the cleanest buckets, the driest corners. Arguments break out easily, but laughter follows just as quickly. The kind of laughter born of nerves rather than joy. Everyone pretends this is adventure. Everyone is determined to believe it for now. As the day stretches on, the sun burns hotter, and the sense of confinement grows sharper. The deck is crowded with men, animals, barrels, and coils of rope, leaving little room to breathe. Each step must be taken carefully, each movement negotiated. Privacy is already a memory, dignity a luxury. Yet in the bustle, there is also an energy, a hum of purpose that keeps despair at bay. The sailors sing as they haul ropes, their voices rising rough and rhythmic, filling the air with a crude kind of music. The sails snap above like drums, the sea foams beneath the prow, and the ships surge forward together as though pulled by some unseen hand. For now, it does feel like adventure, even if your body aches and the air tastes of smoke and sweat. You lean against the railing for a moment, looking out at the horizon. The water stretches in every direction, blue and endless, the sky above a dome of unbroken light. It is beautiful in its immensity, terrifying in its sameness. Land has vanished entirely, and with it the certainty of return. The realization hits you with both fear and exhilaration. You are truly at sea, cut loose from the world you knew. You grip the wood tighter, the salt spray cool on your skin, and tell yourself this is what you wanted, a chance to be part of something that matters. The ocean offers promise, even if it is a promise wrapped in danger. As evening comes, the bustle quiets. The sun sinks low, painting the sails in shades of red and gold, the water shimmering like molten glass. The men eat what is left of fresh bread and meat, still palatable, though already beginning to dry and toughen. Wine is passed around in small measures, laughter rising as men tell stories of past voyages, of women left behind, of riches waiting just beyond the horizon. Shadows lengthen across the deck, and the sea darkens into a heaving black expanse. Lanterns are lit, their glow faint against the immensity of night, casting the ship in trembling halos of yellow. The voices soften, then fade, until only the creak of wood and the sigh of the wind remain. Below deck you climb into your hammock. It sways with the motion of the ship, cradling you uneasily, the ropes groaning as though they might snap. Around you, men settle into their own makeshift beds. some snoring almost instantly, others muttering prayers or curses. The air is thick and close, filled with the mingled odours of sweat, livestock, tar and damp wood. Rats scurry in the shadows, but no one bothers to chase them. The ship groans like a living thing, her timbers shifting with each swell, her belly carrying more than she was ever meant to hold. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds of the sea, the steady lap of water against the hull, the occasional slap of a wave against the deck, the low murmur of the wind threading through the rigging. It is not comfortable, but it is bearable, and perhaps even soothing in its rhythm. For now, there is only the promise of adventure, the sense that history is being written, and that you, anonymous as you are, have a place in it. That optimism carries you into uneasy sleep. Morning arrives, and for the first time since leaving Spain, you wake without the noise of crowds in your ears. The creak of timbers and the sigh of the rigging are now the sounds of your world, as steady as a clock. When you crawl out of your hammock, blinking in the dim light below deck, the ship is already alive with voices. Men stretch sore limbs, rub sleep from their eyes and climb to the surface where the air is fresher. You follow, and when you emerge into the brightness of day, you are greeted by a scene that feels almost festive. The sails are full, snapping gently in a cooperative breeze, and the three ships glide westward together, the Pinta and the Nina keeping close company on either side, like hounds flanking a master. The sun glints across the water, dazzling, and for a moment you feel that the ocean itself has agreed to carry you forward. The crew embraces this first true morning at sea with high spirits. Some men hum as they haul ropes, turning their work into a rhythm that spreads from one pair of hands to another. Others gather in small groups to share jokes or slap dice across a board, scratched hastily into the deck. A few pull out crude instruments, a pipe, a drum, a fiddle missing a string, and a tune rises, uneven but joyful, above the creak and crash of the ship. Laughter spills easily, and voices rise with confidence, for this is still the beginning, still the part of the journey where optimism feels natural. You can almost believe Columbus's promises when you hear the sound of songs cutting clean through the sea air. Food is brought up, and for now it is still edible, even pleasant. Fresh bread, though already drying at the edges, is passed around with generous chunks of salted meat that have not yet soured. Some men gnaw greedily, grease running down their chins, while others sip carefully at their wine, savouring what they know will not last. A barrel of water is opened, and the taste is clean enough, cool on the tongue, though you have heard veterans whisper that it will not remain so. Chickens cluck nervously in their cages, destined to provide eggs and eventually their own flesh, while goats bleat from the hold below. There is abundance compared to what lies ahead, though you do not know the full measure of it yet. For now, hunger is satisfied, thirst is quenched, and the crew is full of both food and confidence. Columbus strides the deck looking commanding. He stops often to speak with officers, to point toward the horizon, to remark on the winds and currents, as though the sea itself were his personal map. His confidence is infectious. Even the men who mutter doubts in private straighten their shoulders when he passes, nodding as if they too see the golden cities he describes. His promises remain vivid in these first days. Lands rich with spices, gold glinting in riverbeds, kings and princes waiting to kneel before Spain's flag. The sailors listen, and in their laughter you hear belief. For a moment, you feel it too. You tell yourself this voyage is not just another venture for merchants, but a chapter of history, and you are inside it. Work fills the spaces between leisure and meals. Ropes must be hauled, sails trimmed, decks scrubbed. Yet there is still a sense of novelty in the tasks. Your hands sting from blisters, your back aches from lifting, but you accept the pain as part of the bargain. Men sing as they pull, their voices gruff but steady, turning toil into rhythm. The officers bark commands, sharp but not yet cruel, for the voyage is still young, and discipline still resembles camaraderie. Even the older sailors seem almost gentle, their warnings softened into stories rather than threats. You haul, scrub, and sweat, but afterward you lean on the railing with a sense of accomplishment, watching the sea foam beneath the prow. The horizon stretches clean and vast, unbroken except by the silhouettes of the Pinta and the Niña. Their sails gleam in the sunlight, their hulls rising and falling with each swell, and you take comfort in their presence. The three ships seem stronger together, like a family bound by rope and canvas. You can hear shouts carry faintly across the water, men on the other decks waving, calling greetings, laughing at jokes you cannot quite catch. The sight reassures you that you're not alone in this expanse. The ocean is immense, yes, but you are part of a fleet, and that means protection. Or at least it feels that way, while the weather holds fair. Evenings are slow, golden, and almost pleasant. The sun sinks low, painting the water in bands of orange and red, and the sailors gather to share wine and songs. Some gamble with dice, coins clattering against the deck, as fortunes change with each roll. Others lean on the rails, staring at the sky as it deepens into indigo, pointing out constellations with a reverence that borders on superstition. The air cools, and for a time the ship feels almost peaceful, as though it were no more dangerous than a village square. You listen to the murmur of voices, the occasional burst of laughter, and feel yourself relax into the rhythm of the sea. Sleep comes easier when the night feels like an extension of fellowship rather than a threat. Below deck the hammocks sway with the movement of the waves, men shifting in their sleep as the ship rocks gently. The air is heavy with the mingled smells of tar, wood and sweat, but it has not yet reached the choking foulness it will later. You breathe through your mouth and drift, the groans of timbers above you, like the voice of the ship herself, steady and reassuring. Rats scurry in the shadows, but you have grown almost accustomed to them already, their presence oddly comforting in its consistency. Days blur slightly, but not unpleasantly. Morning routines grow familiar. Ropes checked, sails adjusted, decks scrubbed. The sun climbs, meals are served, stories are swapped. Men boast of the fortunes they will win, of the women they will return to, of the estates they will purchase with gold, that, in their telling, already feels within reach. The older sailors chuckle, muttering that the sea is less generous than a tavern tale, but even their cynicism cannot dampen the high spirits that dominate the ship. Every roll of dice, every chorus of song, every gulp of wine feeds the illusion that this voyage is charmed. More time passes, and novelty begins to wear off. The first days at sea had felt almost festive, the laughter of sailors carried on the wind as the ships glided westward. But the novelty soon gives way to the rhythm of labour, and it is then that the reality of life aboard the ship presses down with full weight. Morning comes early, announced not by cheerful songs but by the sharp bark of an officer calling men to their tasks. The air is cool, damp with spray, but already heavy with the smell of sweat, smoke, and livestock penned below. The horizon may be beautiful in its vastness, but you have little time to gaze at it now. The ship demands your attention, every creak of rope and groan of timber, a reminder that her survival depends on endless toil. The first job of the day is the ropes. There are miles of them, coiled, stretched, knotted, and fraying in your hands. Each must be hauled, tightened, or loosened as the wind shifts. Canvas snaps above your head, booming like thunder when it catches a sudden gust, and you scramble to keep pace with shouted commands. The rope bites into your palms, leaving angry red welts that quickly deepen into open blisters. Tar and salt mix with sweat until your skin feels raw, every touch a spark of pain. No one cares. Every sailor carries the same wounds, and the officers are too busy to show pity. You grit your teeth, wrap the coarse hemp around your wrists for leverage, and pull until your arms tremble. This is no longer the work of heroes sailing toward glory. This is the work of beasts, straining until the body protests, then straining again. When the ropes are tended, the decks must be scrubbed. Buckets of seawater are hauled up, sloshing across the planks, leaving the wood slick beneath your knees. You scour with brushes until your shoulders ache, scraping away tar stains, animal droppings, spilled food, and the vomit of those who have not yet grown their sea legs. The sun rises higher, baking the wet boards, until steam rises and stings your nose. The brine dries in a salty crust on your skin, itching, but there is no time to stop. Your knees bruise against the hard planks, and splinters drive themselves into your fingers. The deck shines briefly when you finish, but the filth soon returns, carried by boots, barrels, and beasts. The task is endless, and you begin to wonder if the ocean itself conspires to undo every effort you make. Then comes the bilge. Below deck, where light rarely reaches and air scarcely moves, the lowest part of the ship fills steadily with water. Some of it leaks through seams in the hull, some of it collects from rain and spray, some from the endless seep of the sea itself. It stinks of rot, pitch, and stagnant brine. You and the others take turns at the pumps, heaving the handles up and down until your muscles scream. The water gurgles, sluggish, spilling back almost as quickly as you remove it. Rats scatter around your feet, their slick bodies brushing your ankles as they flee the rising puddles. The air down there is heavy, sour, impossible to breathe without coughing. Sweat drips into your eyes and stings the raw skin of your hands. You count the strokes of the pump like prayers, not to measure progress, but to remind yourself that time is passing at all. Meals are brief, often nothing more than a hunk of bread or salted meat, eaten with sore fingers while you crouch against a barrel for support. The food no longer tastes fresh, but hunger dulls your judgment. You chew quickly and swallow, barely tasting anything beyond salt. There is no time for talk, no leisure to linger over wine. The officers call you back before you have fully rested, their voices cutting through the murmur of the crew like whips. You rise because you must. No one defies an order, not when punishment lurks as close as the lash. You remind yourself that this is the price of being part of history, though the grandeur of the thought rings hollow when your arms shake from fatigue. Rope and sail, deck and bilge, the cycle repeats. Each task blends into the next until you can scarcely tell one from another. Your hands are no longer just blistered but torn, the skin hardening into calluses even as new wounds split beneath. Splinters lodge in your palms and remain there, too deep to dig out with dirty fingernails. Your back throbs from lifting barrels and hauling ropes, the ache settling into your spine like a permanent companion. Sweat burns your eyes, salt stings your lips, and every movement grinds grime deeper into your skin. The glamour of sailing to glory is long gone, peeled away like skin from rope-burned hands. What remains is toil unending and thankless. The officers patrol constantly, barking orders, watching for signs of slackening. They move with an authority that feels absolute, their boots polished, their tempers sharp. A word from them can condemn a man to punishment, so you keep your head down and your hands moving. There is no sympathy to be found in their eyes. They see you not as a man, but as part of the ship's machinery, a tool to be driven until it breaks. You wonder how long you can last before that moment comes, but you do not say it aloud. Men who speak of weakness find themselves carrying double burdens. Silence becomes another form of survival. The sun blazes through the afternoon, beating down until the deck radiates heat. The ropes grow hot in your hands, the air thick with the mingled smells of tar, sweat, and animal waste. Chickens squawk from their cages, goats bleat miserably, and the cook's brazier smokes with rancid fat. The stink settles into your clothes, your hair, your skin, until you can no longer tell where the ship ends and you begin. Your stomach churns, your throat tightens, but you press on because there is no choice. A sailor cannot ask for rest, not when the sails must be tended, the pumps must be worked, the deck must be kept passable. The sea does not wait for comfort. It demands labour, and the officers ensure it is given. Even as you work, you notice how quickly the camaraderie of the first days has faded. Songs are fewer now, laughter muted. The men grunt and curse as they haul ropes, their words less about glory and more about pain. Arguments flare easily, fists raised before officers step in with harsh words or the threat of lashes. Fatigue sharpens tempers, and tempers spill like wine across the deck. You feel it in yourself too, the raw edge of irritation that comes with exhaustion. Every command feels like an insult, every shove like a deliberate affront. You bite your tongue because you must, but the taste of anger lingers alongside the salt of sweat. By evening, your body feels broken. The blisters on your hands throb with every heartbeat. Your knees sting from bruises. Your back burns from strain. You slump against the railing for a moment, the horizon glowing red with the dying sun, and you wonder how long you can endure this rhythm. But the officers call again, and you return to the deck with aching limbs. The work does not end when the light fades. Lanterns are lit, casting long shadows, and tasks continue until the officers decide enough has been done for one day. By the time you stumble below deck, every muscle screams, every joint stiff, every thought dulled by fatigue. You lower yourself into your hammock with a groan, the ropes creaking beneath your weight. Around you, men collapse in similar heaps, too weary for talk or laughter. The air is thick with the day's sweat, the stink of bilge, and the faint smoke of the cook's fire, but you're too tired to care. The ship rocks gently, timbers groaning in their endless song, and for the first time, the sounds do not soothe, but remind you of chains that will not loosen. You close your eyes, sore and weary, feeling the first cracks in the dream that had seemed so bright only days ago. The promise of adventure has been replaced by the reality of labour, and though you cling to the pride of being part of history, it feels faint, fragile, almost swallowed by the sea. Soon another truth becomes impossible to ignore. The supplies are not holding. At the start, you'd torn chunks of bread with laughter still ringing in your ears, the meat firm enough to chew, the wine rich enough to soften the edge of the salt air. Now the bread grows stale, harder each day, and the meat has begun to grey around the edges, sweating out brine that slicks your fingers and clings to your mouth long after you swallow. What once passed for nourishment begins to feel like punishment. The men notice it together, though none admit it outright at first. The food is all you have, and complaining changes nothing. But you see it in their expressions, the way they stare into their bowls before forcing themselves to eat, the way they chew slowly, grimly, resigned. The bread, once fresh from Spain's ovens, hardens into stones. You must dunk it into water or wine to soften it enough not to break your teeth, and even then the crust grinds against your gums until they ache. When you break a piece open, you often find it crawling. Weevils have claimed the flour, their pale bodies wriggling in the soft heart of the biscuit. Some sailors pick them out with grimaces, flicking them onto the deck for the rats, but others shrug and chew them with the bread. They say it adds protein, that it makes the biscuit taste less like chalk. You try not to think about it as you eat, but the crunch between your teeth reminds you anyway. Hunger leaves no room for pride. You chew what is given and force yourself to swallow, wishing for the bread you once called stale in Spain, now remembered as luxury. The meat is worse, salted heavily to preserve it. The beef sweats brine in the heat until it turns a greyish colour, stringy and slimy. When the cask is opened, the smell rises like a punch to the nose, sour and heavy, lingering in the air long after the lid is replaced. You gag the first time you taste it, but hunger presses the morsel down your throat. The salt stings your cracked lips and parched tongue, burning more than it nourishes. Some pieces are so tough they cannot be chewed, and men gnaw until their jaws ache before spitting the sinew into the sea. Others are so soft and rancid that they fall apart in your fingers, leaving grease that will not wash away. The officers eat the same meat, though their portions are larger, and even their faces twist with disgust. Yet none refuse. Refusal means hunger, and hunger is already waiting for you all. Water, once clean and cool, now turns against you. Barrels swell and leak, the liquid inside soured by mould and wood. When you raise the ladle to your lips, you smell it before you taste it, a musty, swamp-like stench that makes your stomach clench. The surface of the water sometimes shimmers with a thin green film, a scum you try not to notice as you drink. The taste is foul, like wood soaked too long in rain, but thirst drives you to swallow. Some men vomit it back up, others force it down with closed eyes. You learn to sip quickly, to breathe through your mouth, to imagine you're drinking anything else. Wine lasts longer, but it too thins, turning sour as the voyage stretches on. You ration it carefully, a swallow here, a sip there, clinging to its fading warmth, even as it fails to mask the taste of rot. The animals aboard fare little better. The chickens grow thin in their cages, their feathers dull and ragged. The goats bleat weakly, their eyes rolling with discomfort as the deck pitches beneath them. Feed dwindles and soon they are slaughtered, their flesh salted to stretch what little variety remains. The sound of their cries echoes across the deck as knives do their work, and though you chew their meat hungrily, the taste of blood mixes uneasily with guilt. Eggs vanish first, then milk, leaving only the salted remnants that spoil as quickly as everything else. The ship grows quieter without the animals, though the smell of their pens lingers, mixed with the ever-present stink of sweat and tar. Hunger becomes a constant companion. It is not the sharp, desperate hunger of starvation, not yet, but the dull ache of never being satisfied. Meals are smaller now, each portion carefully measured, each mouthful too little. You think about food more than you should, your mind drifting back to Spain. Bread pulled hot from the oven, meat roasted and dripping with fat, fruit bursting with juice. Those memories feel cruel, like taunts whispered by the past. The men talk often of taverns, of feasts, of markets filled with baskets of oranges and figs. Their voices grow dreamy as they describe the meals waiting for them on their return, their words almost hymns of longing. The ship grows quieter as the food grows worse, for there is nothing left to laugh about at mealtime, only the steady scrape of teeth against stale biscuit, the wet sound of chewing meat that tastes of brine and despair. Your body feels the change. The salt dries your mouth, cracks your lips, and leaves your tongue swollen. Your gums ache, tender from chewing the hard bread, bleeding when you press too hard. Your stomach churns, unsettled by the rancid fat of the beef and the foul taste of the water. Sleep does not ease the ache, for hunger follows you even into dreams, where you see tables laden with food, only to wake with a bitter taste on your tongue. Work becomes harder with each passing day, your limbs heavy, your mind dulled. The energy once sparked by songs and stories dwindles, replaced by the sluggish pace of men enduring rather than thriving. Arguments break out more often at meals. A man complains his portion is too small. Another swears his biscuit is mouldier than the rest. Another tries to steal a better cut of meat from his neighbour's bowl. Fists fly, curses fill the air, and officers wade in to restore order with threats of lashings. No one dares waste food, so even the spoils of these quarrels are eaten, no matter how foul. You learn to guard your ration with your body, to eat quickly before anyone can challenge you, to finish even when your stomach rebels. Hunger has stripped away civility. Meals are no longer communal. They are survival. Even the rats grow bold. They scurry across the deck in plain sight, darting into barrels, gnawing through sacks. Some sailors catch them, kill them, and roast them over the cook's brazier. The smell is sharp and gamey, and though you turn away at first, you cannot help but glance when they chew greedily at the crisped flesh. They do not share, not unless offered coin or favour. You tell yourself you will never stoop to that, never sink to eating vermin. But the hunger whispers that perhaps you would, if it came to it. Perhaps you already understand that you will. The officers try to keep spirits high, offering words of encouragement, promising land is near, promising that the hardship is temporary. But you hear the hollowness in their voices, see the tightness around their mouths when they chew their own rations. Even Columbus eats the same biscuits, the same salted meat, the same soured water. He claims God will guide them, that fortune favours the bold, that riches will make the misery worthwhile. Some men nod, others grumble, but no one argues too loudly. Faith in gold may not fill your stomach, but it is the only nourishment left for the imagination. The days stretch longer, the work heavier under the weight of hunger. Each rope feels thicker, each barrel heavier, each task slower. Your hands tremble when you pull, your knees shake when you lift. The ocean remains indifferent, the horizon unchanged, the sky empty of relief. Meals are no longer moments of rest, but reminders of what you have lost. The smell of brine and rot lingers in your beard, in your clothes, in your very skin. You no longer look forward to food, but you dread its absence even more. By evening the ration is passed out again. A biscuit that crumbles into powder and worms in your hand. A strip of beef that tastes of nothing but salt. A ladle of water that carries the smell of decay. You stare at it, your stomach twisting, your throat dry. Around you, men eat in silence, their jaws moving slowly, their eyes dull. No one speaks of feasts anymore. No one even pretends. You raise the food to your mouth because there is no other choice, because to refuse is to starve. You chew until your jaw aches, swallow against the gag rising in your throat, and force it down. Pride has no place here. Glory has no place here. There is only survival, and you choke down your ration knowing there is no choice but to endure. The food isn't the only unpleasant part of the voyage. There's also the smell. Your nose never escapes it. From the moment you climb out of your hammock until the moment exhaustion drags you back down into it, the ship wraps you in an odour that becomes its own atmosphere. Sweat seeps into the wood of the deck, into the hammocks, into the ropes that pass from hand to hand until they reek like old hides left in the sun. The bilge water below sends up its steady perfume of rot, a damp sourness that rises through the planks whenever the pumps are slow. Vomit stains the boards near the rails, a crust that no amount of scrubbing quite removes. Smoke from the cook's brazier drifts through the air, carrying with it the oily stench of rancid fat. The chamber pots slosh in their corners, their contents carried only when they overflow, and even then, the act of dumping them overboard leaves streaks that bake under the sun. Every breath is punishment, a reminder that the ocean may be vast, but the world aboard ship is claustrophobic and foul. At first you try to ignore it, to tell yourself that you will grow accustomed as you have grown accustomed to hunger. But the smell is relentless, shifting from hour to hour, but never easing. When the sun climbs, sweat pours from every man, saturating shirts until they stick to bodies, until the deck itself gleams slick with salt and grease. The odour of hundreds of unwashed bodies mingles with the animal pens, where goats and chickens stand in their own filth, their bedding soaked through long ago. The air grows heavy and close, pressing on your lungs. Even when a gust of wind sweeps across the deck, it does not bring relief. It only stirs the mixture, carrying smoke into sweat, urine into tar, vomit into bilge. You breathe it in because you must. Each inhalation, a reminder that the sea air you once thought clean has been drowned beneath the stench of humanity trapped together. The clothes you wear are soaked with it. Salt stiffens the fabric until it chafes your skin, and every movement releases a new wave of odour. You catch whiffs of yourself as you haul a rope, as you bend to scrub the deck, as you shift in your hammock, and each one makes you recoil though you cannot escape. Washing is impossible. Water is too precious to waste on bathing, and seawater only leaves you sticky, your skin coated with a crust of salt that clings to every crease. The stink clings too, a permanent second skin. Men joke bitterly that the smell has become their uniform, that Spain itself would recoil if they ever returned in this condition. But the laughter never lasts. You can hear the disgust in their voices, the way they sniff at themselves and grimace, the way they avoid standing too close though the ship leaves them no choice. The food carries its own odour, each meal a fresh assault. The barrels of beef reek when they are opened, the brine releasing a wave of sourness that makes men turn their heads even as they reach for their portion. The hardtack smells faintly of mould, the mustiness of damp grain clinging to every biscuit. The water, soured by wood and age, adds its own swamp-like note. When you lift the bowl to your mouth, the stench strikes first, so that you gag before the taste even touches your tongue. Rats scurry across the deck with their own musky sharpness, leaving droppings behind, and the brazier fills the air with a haze of grease and char. Eating becomes less about hunger and more about endurance, each swallow forced against the revolt of your senses. Even sleep offers no escape. Below deck the air hangs motionless, thick with the exhalations of dozens of bodies packed together. The hammocks sway gently, their ropes creaking, and with every swing the smell shifts but never fades. Feet unwashed for weeks give off their sour rot, mingling with the tang of sweat-soaked shirts and the sharp reek of chamber pots that wait in corners for morning. The wood itself seems to sweat foulness, absorbing everything spilled, everything rotted, everything left behind. You wake with your mouth dry, your nose burning, your head pounding from the closeness of it. The idea of fresh air becomes something you no longer believe in. Even the deck at dawn, when the wind is coolest, carries the reek of waste washed into the sea, the lingering odour of smoke from the night fire, the acrid tang of tar. The smell seeps into your memory, turning dreams sour. You imagine walking again through Spain's markets, past stalls of oranges and roasted meat. Yet even there, the smoke of the brazier intrudes, the stink of bilge creeping into the imagined sweetness. You dream of lying in fields, of grass and earth, but the scent of sweat and rot follows, poisoning even your escape. Men wake cursing, their faces twisted with disgust, swearing they could taste the stench in their sleep. Some try to cover their noses with cloth, but the fabric soon stinks as well, saturated with the very air they're trying to avoid. There is no boundary between body and odour anymore. You're soaked in it as surely as you're soaked in sweat. Arguments rise out of it. Men complain that others smell worse, that their hammocks reek, that their clothes have grown unbearable. Fists are raised, insults shouted, officers stepping in to restore order with harsh words. Yet the truth is plain. Everyone stinks, and there is no cure for it. The sea mocks you with its immensity, stretching clean and endless, while you suffocate in filth barely contained within a few dozen feet of wood. You envy the gulls that once circled above, free to glide in air untainted by smoke and waste. But they have long since vanished, leaving you trapped in your floating prison of odour. Sometimes the wind shifts, and you think for a moment that the smell has gone, that clean air has returned. But it is only illusion. The odour lessens in one place, only to rise stronger in another. You climb to the deck hoping the sea breeze will carry relief, but the tar, the bilge, the sweat, the smoke are all still there, whipped together into new combinations. Below deck the air is worse, a stew of foulness that has no escape. The officers tell you to endure, that this is the way of life at sea, but endurance has limits, and yours is stretched thin. Each breath is not simply air drawn into your lungs, but an act of submission, an acceptance that you're drowning slowly in filth. You begin to wonder if you will ever smell clean air again. Spain feels far away, its fields and orchards fading into memory. The scent of fresh bread, of tilled earth, of wood smoke rising from a hearth. These feel like inventions, stories you once told yourself. Reality is this: sweat soaked into your skin until it never leaves. Bilge water rising with each creak of the hull. Vomit crusted into the seams of the deck. Waste sloshing in corners, smoke clinging to every thread of fabric. You press a hand to your face, as though you might block it out, but your own flesh reeks too, as if you yourself have become part of the ship's atmosphere. By the end of each day, the smell is no longer something you notice. It is something you wear. It seeps into your pores, your clothes, your breath. You carry it even into the brief moments when the sea breeze seems to clear the air, for the stench clings closer than the wind can strip away. The others are the same, each of you exuding the same foulness until individuality itself seems lost. You are no longer men but extensions of the ship's odour, indistinguishable in your reek. You lie in your hammock at night and listen to the timbers creak, the rats scuttle, the men cough, and you understand the truth. There is no fresh air here, only layers of foulness, shifting, mingling, and pressing into every breath you take. The ship does not simply smell rotten, it begins to rot the crew themselves. Seasickness never leaves some men. Each rise and fall of the ship sends them scrambling to the rails, heaving until their voices are hoarse. But beyond the endless retching lies a darker truth. In such close quarters, with spoiled food, sour water, and waste sloshing in corners, sickness breeds. The first groans are easy to dismiss as fatigue. Soon they grow into coughs, fevers, sores, and mouths swollen with blood. The voyage carries more than dreams of discovery. It carries disease, and no one is spared its reach. The stomach is the first to betray you. Men double over with diarrhea that leaves them weak and trembling, their bowels emptying faster than they can be refilled. Chamber pots overflow, filth seeping into the planks. Some never make it that far, collapsing where they stand, leaving streaks to be scrubbed while officers shout in fury. Dehydration comes quickly, faces hollowing, lips cracking, eyes sunken as men stagger at their posts. They reach for water to soothe the thirst, but the very barrels that promise relief are already tainted, feeding the cycle that drains them further. Every sip becomes both medicine and poison, and still you drink, because thirst will not be denied. Fever follows, striking without warning. A sailor who pulls rope in the morning is shivering by afternoon, sweat pouring down his face, his hands trembling too much to grip. Hammocks sag under men who burn with heat one moment and shake with cold the next, muttering nonsense through cracked lips. Others drag themselves to the deck, hoping for the wind to cool them, only to slump against barrels, eyes vacant, bodies wasted. Work does not pause for sickness. Officers bark for replacements, and the healthy men groan as they carry more than their share. Compassion wears thin. A man too sick to stand becomes a burden, and burdens are met with kicks, curses, and contempt. Skin begins to show the cost of confinement. Rashes spread across backs and thighs, rubbed raw by salt-stiff cloth that never dries. Sores fester where ropes cut, where sweat pools where filth lingers. Splinters left in too long swell into angry welts that ooze pus. Infection sets in quickly, the smallest cut turning foul within days. Men hide their wounds when they can, ashamed or fearful of ridicule, but the stench of rot on their bodies betrays them. The ship carries not only the stink of bilge and waste, but also the unmistakable odour of flesh gone bad, decay carried into every breath you take. Mouths suffer most of all. At first it is only tenderness when chewing the hard biscuits, but soon gums bleed freely, turning bread red, dripping down chins. Swelling grows worse until men cannot close their mouths without pain. Teeth begin to loosen. The veterans mutter about scurvy, a disease born of too much salt meat and no fresh food. You feel it yourself, the ache when you bite, the throbbing that pulses through your jaw, the metallic taste of blood you swallow without wanting to. It is still the early stage, but fear grows with each crimson stain on bread. You wonder how much worse it can become, how many teeth will be gone before land is found. The noise of sickness fills the ship. Coughs echo from every corner, some shallow and dry, others wet and rattling as if lungs are drowning. Retching rises and falls, weak groans following when nothing is left inside. Fevered men mutter in half-sleep, their voices cracking, their words nonsense. The ship itself groans as always, but human sounds drown it out. Louder and more constant. Even laughter carries sickness in it now. Cracked and bitter. Laughter only to keep despair at bay. The voyage has lost its songs. What fills the air instead is the chorus of illness, a rhythm of coughing, cursing, and moaning. The officers keep their distance, though even they are not immune. They shout for harder scrubbing, faster dumping of waste, more diligence at the pumps. Yet the air is too close, the bodies too many, the sickness too stubborn. You see an officer wipe blood from his gums when he thinks no one watches, his jaw tight with denial. Another grips the rail with white knuckles, his hands trembling as he forces his voice louder. Authority does not protect them. The same foul water and spoiled food claim them too, though they hide it behind sharp words and polished boots. Disease does not care for rank. By day you try to keep moving, to pretend your own body resists. Work distracts you, gives your hands and arms something to do besides tremble. But every rope feels heavier, every climb slower. Your back aches more sharply. Your knees threaten to give way. The sun, once a comfort, now beats on your skull until you stagger. Your gums bleed with each bite of biscuit. Your belly cramps with each swallow of water. Your skin burns with sores that will not heal. Each task is less about serving the voyage than proving to yourself you can still move. By night, the sickness becomes impossible to ignore. You lie in your hammock, the air thick with sweat and rot, and listen to the noise that never ends. Coughs rattle in the dark, sometimes followed by silence so long you wonder if the man is dead, before another spasm proves otherwise. Men groan in fever dreams, muttering prayers or curses. A few whisper for their mothers, their wives, their children. You hear it all in the cramped dark, each voice part of a chorus you cannot escape. The smell of sickness presses on you as much as the sound, a cloud that lingers with every shallow breath. Hunger, filth, and disease intertwine until you cannot separate one misery from another. The same biscuit that fills your stomach scrapes blood from your gums. The same water that eases thirst scours your insides with sickness. The same air that cools your skin drags foulness into your lungs. The ship has become a vessel of contagion, a place where every breath, every sip, every bite betrays you. You whisper prayers you no longer believe in, not for health, but for endurance. The voyage is no longer an adventure. It is survival one day, one cough, one swallow at a time. The hours stretch long in the dark, your body aching, your mind restless. Sleep comes only in fragments, broken by the sound of coughing beside you, groaning above you, muttering below you. Rats scurry in the shadows, bold enough to run across hammocks, as men toss in fever. The ship rocks gently, its timbers groaning with the strain of waves, but even that rhythm cannot soothe you now. You lie awake, staring into the blackness, listening to the endless noise of sickness. Around you, men cough, curse and moan, and you realise the truth. There is no silence left on board, only the constant reminder of how fragile everybody has become. Eventually, illness becomes just another fact of shipboard life, as ordinary as hauling ropes or pumping bilge. Men still cough, some still retch, others lie in hammocks, too weak to rise, but you're no longer among them. The fever that once burned in your body has broken, the cramps in your gut have eased, and though your gums throb when you chew the biscuit, you count yourself fortunate. Strength returns slowly, unevenly, but it is enough. You no longer stagger with each rope hauled, and you no longer dread the taste of water quite as much. Yet survival carries no triumph, for when sickness loosens its grip, something heavier takes its place. Time itself becomes the enemy, pressing down with a weight the body cannot shake. The days stretch into sameness. Morning bleeds into afternoon, afternoon into dusk, each hour indistinguishable from the last. The work continues, of course, ropes, sails, scrubbing, bilge, but it has long since lost its novelty. What grinds on you now is not the labour, but the emptiness around it, the vastness of the horizon that never changes. You rise, you work, you eat, you sleep, and at no point does the world shift. Water meets sky in an unbroken circle, blue by day, black by night, and it feels as though you're not moving at all. The ocean gives no hint of progress, no sign of direction. You might as well be suspended in a void, carried nowhere. The men turn to games to fill the hours. Cards are dealt across barrels, dice clatter against the planks, coins or scraps of food changing hands with each throw. Some gamble with a reckless edge, swearing loudly as fortunes rise and fall, while others play only to occupy their fingers, tossing dice as though the act alone might summon distraction. You join in sometimes, though the thrill dulls quickly. A hand of cards is just another stretch of time consumed, another hour swallowed before work calls again. Victory brings no joy beyond a fleeting smile, and loss carries little sting. For what good are coins in a place where nothing can be bought? The games end as they always do, with men scattering back to their duties, their eyes as dull as before. Prayers serve as another refuge. Sailors kneel, murmur, cross themselves, whisper litanies they half remember. Some pray loudly, voices pitched to carry, hoping faith will spread like fire in dry brush. Others keep their words low, lips moving silently, eyes darting as though ashamed. You pray as well, though your words feel more like habit than belief. The monotony numbs you until prayer becomes a kind of counting, a rhythm to mark time rather than a true appeal to heaven. The officers encourage it, nodding gravely, promising that God favours persistence. Yet no amount of prayer changes the horizon, which remains empty no matter how many Ave Marias are offered. When games and prayers lose their hold, men stare at the sea. They lean on the rails, eyes fixed on the endless blue, mouths slack, thoughts unfathomable. Hours pass in silence, only the creak of the ship and the slap of waves filling the air. You find yourself joining them, staring until your eyes blur, waiting for something, anything, to break the monotony. A gull, a fish, a shadow on the horizon. But nothing comes. The sea is patient, eternal, and utterly indifferent. The sameness seeps into your mind until you feel hollowed out, your thoughts running in circles, your memory of land growing faint. You think of Spain's markets, of cobbled streets, of fields heavy with grain, and they seem less like memories and more like stories you once heard told. Meals do nothing to break the monotony. The rations arrive at predictable times, the same stale bread, the same salted meat, the same sour water. Hunger forces you to eat, but the act feels mechanical. The taste no longer revolting, but simply dull. You chew and swallow because you must, not because there is any pleasure in it. Around you, men do the same. Jaws moving slowly, eyes downcast. Conversation dwindles, but there is nothing new to say. Complaints repeat until they lose force, stories told so often they sound lifeless. Even curses fade, muttered without passion. Eating becomes another chore, no different from scrubbing a deck or coiling rope. The weather offers little relief. The sun rises, burns, sets and rises again, each day indistinguishable from the last. The wind blows steadily, filling the sails without drama, carrying you onward with a pace too smooth to be felt. Storms would at least offer disruption, danger, something to mark the passage of time. But calm seas breed their own torment. The ship moves, but you cannot feel it. The days pass, but you cannot see it. You begin to wonder if you are adrift in circles, condemned to sail forever in a sea with no edges, no destination. The thought creeps into the minds of others too. You see it in the way they watch the horizon, with narrowed eyes as though willing it to break open and reveal land. Your body settles into a rhythm as relentless as the sea. You wake, you work, you eat, you rest. The fever has passed, the cramps have eased, and for now you function. Yet you feel no stronger than before, only dulled. The tasks you perform no longer challenge you, they simply drain. Ropes are hauled without thought, decks scrubbed without care, pumps worked with arms that move because they must. You are not sick, not in the way others still are, but you are not whole either. You exist in a state between, where the body continues but the spirit falters. Each day feels borrowed, indistinguishable from the last, and no promise of gold or glory can pierce the fog of monotony. Men try to carve out small rebellions against the sameness. A sailor sings a bawdy tune, louder than necessary, drawing a few chuckles before the sound fades. Another scratches crude drawings into the deck, only to have them scrubbed away by officers. Some tell stories of past voyages, of storms weathered, of lands glimpsed, but the words fall flat. None of it matters compared to the reality of the endless horizon. You laugh when you're expected to, nod when you're required, but inside you feel the weight of emptiness, pressing harder each day. You begin to understand that boredom is its own kind of sickness, slower but no less dangerous, eating away at willpower until nothing remains but habit. At night, the monotony lingers. Hammocks sway gently in the darkness, men shifting in their sleep, the air filled with the same coughs and mutters as always. You lie awake sometimes, not from pain but from restlessness. The day has offered nothing new, and the night promises the same. The ship rocks, the timbers creak, the rats scurry, and none of it feels different from the night before. You drift into uneasy sleep, only because there is nothing else to do, not because you find rest. Dreams mirror the day, blank horizons, endless water, faces repeating the same words until they blur together. Even in sleep, you cannot escape the cycle. As the voyage drags on, days and weeks blur into one. You struggle to remember when you last saw land, when you last smelled anything other than tar, sweat and rot. Memory loses its sharpness, dulled by repetition. The men grow quieter, their movements slower, their eyes hollow. The officers still speak of progress, of miles covered, of faith rewarded, but their words sound distant, irrelevant. The sea offers no evidence, no proof. Each day dawns on the same circle of water. Each dusk closes on the same emptiness. Hope stretches thinner with every sunrise. stretched until it feels ready to snap. The sameness begins to gnaw at you, more insidious than hunger, more corrosive than sickness. It seeps into your thoughts, whispers that perhaps there is no land, no end, no point. You push the notion aside, force yourself to haul ropes, to play cards, to mutter prayers, but the whisper grows louder in the silence between tasks. The ocean does not answer. It gives you nothing but the same horizon, day after day, week after week. And as you lean against the rail, staring at the endless blue, a creeping unease settles into your chest. There is no land in sight. There is no certainty left. Weeks pass, though you lose track of how many. The horizon remains unchanged, a perfect circle of water and sky that mocks you with its sameness. Each sunrise feels like a repetition, each sunset a trick that erases any sense of progress. The officers claim the ships have travelled farther than any before, that Spain shrinks behind you with every gust of wind, but the evidence never appears. No gulls skim the waves, no driftwood bobs to the surface, no coastline breaks the distance. The ocean is endless, and the men begin to whisper. At first, the whispers are only nervous grumbles muttered in hammocks at night, or over dice on the deck. They speak of the distance, of how far west you have already sailed, of how there is no proof that Asia waits ahead. They remember stories of ships swallowed whole, of oceans that lead nowhere, of monsters waiting at the edge of the world. Some speak of God's wrath, punishment for daring to chase illusions beyond the safety of known waters. Others curse Columbus by name, calling him a liar, a madman who has trapped them in a voyage that cannot succeed. The words are soft at first, but they grow bolder with each day of sameness. The silence of the horizon feeds them. Columbus answers with confidence, or at least with the appearance of it. He strides the deck, gesturing westward, declaring that land lies just beyond sight, that the voyage is blessed, that every hardship endured will soon be rewarded. His voice still carries authority, but you notice the cracks. His speeches come more often now, as if he fears silence more than dissent. He speaks louder, sharper, his gestures more forceful, but his eyes dart too quickly, scanning faces for signs of rebellion. Some men nod dutifully, others mutter approval, but the doubt remains. No words can change the horizon. No promise can conjure land where none appears. The officers repeat his claims, barking at the men to have faith, to hold fast, to trust their captain. They threaten punishment for grumbling, lashings for defiance, but even their voices tremble slightly. You catch them in quiet moments, their brows furrowed, their fingers restless on the rail. They know as well as the sailors do that time is running out. Supplies dwindle with each passing week. Hunger gnaws deeper, thirst worsens, sickness lingers. Without land, without relief, there is only more of the same, until the ocean itself claims you. Authority cannot hide fear forever, and the men can smell it as clearly as the bilge. Arguments grow sharper at night. Dice games turn violent, prayers turn desperate, stories of home turn bitter. Men curse their luck, curse Spain, curse themselves for agreeing to the voyage. Some demand the ships turn back before it is too late. They point out that Spain may still be within reach, that the winds could carry them home if they reverse course soon. Others argue that turning back would mean death just the same, that supplies would fail before the coast appeared again. Each voice rises with frustration, each man convinced of doom, whether they sail west or east. The ship groans with tension, more fragile than its timbers, more dangerous than any storm. You feel the fear pressing on you as well. At first it is only unease, the same dread that crept in when the horizon refused to change. But now it is heavier, a knot that tightens in your chest each morning when the sea greets you with the same empty stare. You find yourself scanning the sky for birds. searching the waves for debris, staring until your eyes ache for any sign that you are not adrift in nothingness. Each time you see only water, the knot grows tighter. You tell yourself to trust Columbus, to trust the officers, to trust that Spain would not send men to their deaths on a fool's errand. Yet doubt gnaws at you, sharper than hunger. The murmurs of mutiny spread. Men whisper of forcing Columbus to turn back, of refusing orders, of seizing control of the ships. The words are not shouted, not yet, but they pass from man to man like embers waiting for kindling. You hear them at the pumps, muttered while hands grip the handles. You hear them in the shadows below deck, voices low and angry. You even hear them from men you thought loyal, their faces grim as they admit their trust is fraying. Each whisper makes your skin prickle, each suggestion of revolt heavier than the last. You do not join in, not openly, but you cannot silence the thought. Perhaps they are right, perhaps turning back is the only hope left. Columbus senses the danger. His speeches grow more fervent, his eyes sharper, his temper shorter. He punishes disobedience more quickly, lashes men who speak too loudly, confines those who refuse orders. He calls for prayer more often, insisting that God himself guides the voyage, that doubt is sin, that faith will be rewarded. But faith is fragile when bellies are empty and throats are dry. Each lash of the whip deepens resentment, each sermon feels hollow. The more Columbus insists, the less convincing he becomes. You watch him and wonder whether he truly believes his own words, or whether he clings to them because they are all he has left. The fear seeps into dreams. You wake in the dark, heart pounding, certain you have heard land called from the deck, only to find silence. You dream of Spain's coast, of bells ringing in distant towns, of fields and markets, only to wake to the same stench and the same creaking timbers. Some men talk in their sleep, whispering homeward, crying out in fear, muttering curses. Others lie rigid in their hammocks, eyes open, staring into the dark as though the void of the sea has followed them below. Sleep offers no escape. The horizon haunts you even with eyes closed. By day the ship still moves, sails full, waves steady, but progress feels meaningless. Each rope hauled, each deck scrubbed, each pump worked is just another moment endured. Not a step toward anything. You feel yourself drifting through motions, your body a machine that obeys commands, while your mind circles the same fear again and again. You think of Spain often, of its markets and fields, but the image grows weaker, faded like a painting left in the sun. You wonder if memory itself can be trusted, or if Spain has become as mythical as the lands Columbus promises ahead. Night comes, and you climb into your hammock, the ropes creaking as your weight settles. Around you men mutter, cough and shift, their voices low but restless. The air is thick, stifling, the smell of sickness and sweat never leaving. You close your eyes, but sleep refuses to come. The whispers of mutiny echo in your ears, mingling with the sound of waves and the creak of wood. The horizon remains in your mind, unchanged, unbroken, mocking you even in darkness. You wonder if you will ever see Spain again, if its fields and markets are already lost to you. Fear already hangs heavy when the first clouds begin to gather. At first, they are only smudges on the horizon, dark against the endless blue, but soon they spread, thickening into a wall of grey that swallows the sky. The wind shifts, sharp and restless, snapping the sails harder than before. Officers bark orders to trim canvas, and men scramble up the rigging, ropes groaning as they are hauled tight. The air grows heavy, charged with something you cannot name, prickling against your skin. The sea itself darkens, the once gentle swells rising higher, the water churning with an edge that speaks of trouble to come. You stand at your post and feel the knot in your chest tighten. The horizon has refused to change for weeks, but now it changes too quickly, and none of it promises safety. The first gusts hit with sudden violence, nearly throwing men off their feet. Sails boom and snap as the wind tears into them, filling them until the masts creak with strain. Rain spits in sharp bursts, stinging your face, carried sideways by the gale. The decks grow slick, water pooling and washing through every gap in the planks. The animals panic, bleating and clucking, their cries rising above the roar of the wind. Officers shout to secure them, but it is already too late. Some cages slide across the deck, crashing into barrels, spilling splinters and feathers. You lunge for a rope and cling to it, your body whipped by the spray, your arms burning with the effort of holding on. Around you, men curse, stumble, shout, their voices snatched away by the gale. The storm deepens with terrifying speed. Lightning cracks across the sky, splitting the black clouds into jagged white, illuminating the sea in brief flashes that burn into your vision. Thunder follows, a sound so immense it seems to shake the ship itself, reverberating through your chest. Rain pours in sheets now, soaking through clothes, plastering hair to faces, blinding eyes. The ship pitches wildly, its prow rising high before slamming down into the trough of a wave, the impact rattling teeth and knees. You slam against the rail and cling harder to the rope, the wood slick beneath your fingers, the salt stinging your raw skin. Each moment feels like the one that will end it all. Sails rip with sharp cracks, the canvas splitting under the relentless force. Shreds of cloth whip through the air, snapping like lashes against men who scramble to tie what remains. The masts groan and sway, their timbers straining against the violence of the wind. You watch as a man is thrown from the rigging, his scream cut short when he vanishes into the dark water below. Another slips on the deck and slides toward the rail, caught at the last moment by a comrade who nearly follows him over. The sea does not wait, does not care. It surges higher, slamming into the hull, spraying cold water across your face, until you choke on it. The ocean feels alive, vengeful, determined to claim you. Commands are shouted, but they're drowned in the roar of the storm. Lanterns are snuffed out by the rain, plunging the deck into a shifting chaos of shadow and lightning. You glimpse faces twisted in fear, eyes wide and teeth clenched, then lose them again in the dark. Men crawl instead of walk, clinging to ropes, crawling across slick planks like insects. Their movements jerky and desperate. The officers are no longer figures of authority, but voices barely audible above the gale. Their commands as fragile as paper in the rain. Columbus himself appears on deck, shouting orders, his cloak plastered to his body, his hair whipped across his face. He looks less like a man of destiny, and more like another sailor fighting not to be swept away. The ships groan as though they are alive, every timber creaking with strain, every joint shuddering under the weight of the storm. The Santa Maria bucks and twists, the deck tilting steeply one moment, plunging the next. You hear the Pinta shouting across the waves, voices distorted by wind and distance, though the ship itself is barely visible through the sheets of rain. The Niña disappears entirely for long stretches, swallowed by darkness until a flash of lightning reveals her clinging stubbornly to the swells. Each glimpse fills you with equal parts relief and dread. Relief that she still floats, dread that she may not for long. Your body aches with the effort of holding on. Your arms burn, your back screams, your legs shake with each new tilt of the deck. Salt water fills your mouth, carried by spray and rain, choking you until you cough and retch. You pray without realizing it, words tumbling through clenched teeth, prayers for strength, for survival, for dawn. Around you, others do the same, their voices ragged, their words lost in the gale. The storm strips you of everything except the need to endure the next moment, the next breath, the next wave. You think of nothing else, because thinking further is unbearable. Hours pass without measure. The storm shows no mercy, only shifting from worse to different. Sometimes the wind shrieks so loud it feels like a blade pressed against your ears. Sometimes the waves rise so high you see only a wall of black water bearing down, convinced the ship cannot possibly climb it. Each time the Santa Maria rises, trembling, only to plunge down again, her hull groaning, her beams rattling like bones. The ship feels less like a vessel of discovery and more like a coffin being shaken before burial. Men collapse where they stand, too exhausted to keep fighting. Others drag them upright, shouting, slapping, forcing them back to their tasks, because letting go is death. The lash is not needed tonight. Fear is enough to drive men past breaking. You cling to your rope, your muscles screaming, your mind blank but for survival. Lightning flashes again and again, revealing pale faces streaked with rain and salt. Eyes wide with the knowledge that death sails with you. Each flash feels like it could be the last image you ever see. At last, mercifully, the storm begins to break. The rain lessens. The wind shifts from a howl to a heavy gust. The sea calms from fury to anger. The waves still crash high, but the rhythm grows steadier, less chaotic, less deadly. The men remain at their posts, unwilling to trust the change, their eyes fixed on the sails, the masts, the water. You are soaked through, shivering, every muscle quivering from exertion. Your throat raw from salt and shouting. The ship still groans, but it no longer screams with every swell. The storm does not vanish. It eases, slowly, grudgingly, as though deciding you may live a while longer. Dawn creeps across the horizon, pale and cold, revealing the battered state of the fleet. Torn sails flap uselessly, ropes hang loose, barrels lie smashed against the rails. The men stand hollow-eyed, water dripping from their hair and clothes, their faces gaunt with exhaustion. Some slump against the planks, others fall into their hammocks, without strength to undress, their bodies trembling as the adrenaline fades. The officers look no better, their commands reduced to weary mutters, their authority dimmed by the storm's contempt. You look around at the wreckage, at the men who fought and endured, and you know none of you will ever forget the night. The sea is calm again, but the memory of its fury remains, carved into every hollow face, every shaking hand, every whispered breath of relief. Work continues in silence as torn sails are patched, ropes replaced, barrels lashed down more tightly than before. Survival has been won for now, but no one feels victorious. Hunger still gnaws, thirst still burns, sores still fester, and sleep brings no relief. What the storm could not break, monotony resumes, pressing harder than ever. It is in this exhausted, weakened state that minds begin to wander. Visions rise where reason fails, and delirium seeps into the cracks. The first comes with a cry of birds. A sailor points skyward, his voice cracking as he swears feathers cut across the blue. Men rush to look, shading their eyes against the glare, straining until their necks ache. The sky remains empty. The man insists he saw wings, insists he heard the faint call of gulls, insists that land must be near if birds circle overhead. His desperation is plain, his eyes wild with certainty. The others mutter, some cursing, some mocking, but even as they deny it, they cannot help but glance upward, again and again, searching for what is not there. The doubt planted by his words lingers long after the sky proves barren. Another claims to see driftwood. He leans over the rail, shouting, pointing to something bobbing among the swells. The crew presses close, eager, hearts thudding, but the water rolls empty, unbroken by anything more solid than foam. The man stares as though betrayed, his hand trembling, his mouth moving in frantic whispers. Others shove him aside, muttering that hunger has blinded him, that he sees what he wants to see. Yet the seed of hope stirs again, cruel and brief. If one man can see branches, perhaps another will see leaves or soil or smoke. You feel it yourself, that twitch in your chest that longs to believe, and then the dull collapse when the water proves indifferent. Soon the cries of "Tierra" pierce the air. The first comes from the rigging, a sailor shouting so loudly, his voice cracks, joy and panic mingling. Men abandon their tasks, surging to the rails, their eyes burning westward. Columbus himself strides to the deck, his face lit with triumph, his arm raised to silence the chaos. All eyes strain at the horizon. You stare until your vision swims, desperate for the line of mountains, the faint smear of coast, any shape that could mean salvation. There is nothing. The horizon remains unbroken, as it has for weeks. The sailor insists he saw it, swears it on his life, but anger swells against him. Officers drag him down, threatening lashes for raising false hope. The crowd disperses slowly, shoulders slumping, eyes dulled. The silence that follows is heavier than before. The pattern repeats. Each day, another voice cries that land is in sight, and each time the horizon betrays them. Sometimes it is clouds, their shapes suggestive, their shadows tricking tired eyes into believing they see mountains. Sometimes it is the light itself, bending across the waves, casting illusions of distant shores. Once a sailor swears he sees smoke rising, thin wisps curling into the air. He insists he can smell fire, even taste it, but the rest find nothing. He weeps when they mock him, his sobs mingling with curses hurled in frustration. Each false sighting carves deeper into morale. The first brought wild hope, the second bitter disappointment, the third open despair. By the 10th, no one believes, yet all still look. Columbus grows more desperate with each false alarm. He warns against deceit, calls false cries the devil's work, threatens punishment for liars. Yet even as he scolds, his own eyes linger on the horizon longer than before. His speeches come more often, urging faith, urging patience, promising that land waits just beyond sight. But his words ring thinner, his confidence stretched. The men notice the pauses, the clenched jaw, the way his gaze flickers when yet another promise fails. His authority holds by force, but belief drains like water through a cracked barrel. Delusions spread beyond the horizon. A man swears he hears bells, faint but unmistakable, drifting across the waves from some distant church. Another insists he sees lights glimmering at night, lanterns swinging on unseen shores. Men argue fiercely over these visions, shouting that they are true, that they are lies, that God himself sends omens to guide them. Fists fly, dice are thrown aside, prayers become curses. Officers intervene with shouts and blows, but the madness clings. The voyage no longer feels like discovery. It feels like a fevered dream, each man trapped inside his own visions. You are not immune. When you stare long enough, the horizon shimmers, the line between sea and sky bending until shapes seem to rise from it. For a heartbeat, you see trees, dark and heavy with leaves, and your heart leaps. You blink, and they vanish. Another time, you swear you glimpse a shoreline, the faintest smear of green against the endless blue, and you lean so far over the rail, you nearly fall. But again, there is nothing. Each time hope swells, each time it dies, and each time you feel more hollow than before. You tell yourself to stop looking, to close your eyes, to focus only on rope and sail, but your head turns westward without your consent, your eyes drawn back to the mocking emptiness. The nights bring no relief. Men toss in their hammocks, muttering of land, of birds, of rivers. Some rise suddenly, staggering to the deck, swearing they smell grass or hear voices on the wind. Others thrash in fever dreams, crying out as though drowning, shaking until they collapse again. You lie awake, staring into the dark, the creak of timbers mingling with the broken whispers of men haunted by visions. The storm once filled the night with terror, but now the silence does the same. It presses on you, heavy and endless, broken only by false cries that shatter what little rest you find. One morning days later, dawn breaks with a cry so sharp it slices through sleep. Tierra! The word explodes across the deck, frantic, desperate, and unlike the countless false alarms before, it carries a weight that stirs even the most jaded men. Hammocks sway as bodies lurch upright, boots thud against planks as sailors rush for the rail, and shouts rise in chorus. You drag yourself upward, heart hammering, half convinced it is another cruel trick, another mirage conjured by fatigue. Yet when your eyes lift to the horizon, you see it too. The line is faint at first, a smudge of shadow where sea meets sky, but as the light grows, the shape sharpens, darker than clouds, steadier than waves. Land, real land. Men scream the word again and again, their voices cracking, their faces split with disbelief. They cling to each other, laugh, weep openly, fall to their knees in prayer. Hands lift toward heaven. Crosses are drawn in the air, oaths are sworn aloud. The ship that had groaned with despair the night before now shakes with noise of another kind. Jubilation that feels as frantic as it is fragile. Columbus strides onto the deck, his presence cutting through the chaos like a blade. His eyes blaze, his jaw lifts, his voice rings above the shouting. He declares that he had promised this moment, that God has blessed the voyage, that faith has triumphed. Officers echo him, shouting praise, their own relief spilling into obedience. Some kneel before him, swearing loyalty, while others cheer his name until it drowns even the cries of Tierra. Columbus lifts his hands and accepts the worship as his due. The land on the horizon becomes his proof, his vindication, his triumph. The sailors may have doubted, but now they see, and he ensures that they know who has led them to salvation. Prayers rise in a great tide. Men fall to their knees on wet planks, their voices rising in shaky unison. The Our Father, the Ave Maria, blessings and oaths, and murmured psalms. Some sob openly, clutching rosaries, pressing their foreheads to the deck, as though the wood itself carries God's touch. Others kiss the air, their lips trembling as they whisper thanks for survival, for deliverance, for the promise that their suffering was not in vain. The noise is as overwhelming as the storm had been. A roar of voices, but this time carried by relief rather than terror. You mutter the prayers with the rest, though your voice feels hollow in your own ears. As the ships draw closer, the land sharpens into detail. Green rises where for weeks there had been only blue, trees thick against the sky, a shoreline stretching across the horizon. It looks impossibly solid, impossibly real, as though it had been conjured from a dream. Men point with shaking hands, shouting about rivers, about forests, about smoke they swear rises from unseen fires. Some claim to see figures moving along the coast, though distance makes it impossible. The frenzy builds with each new sighting, each new certainty that salvation lies ahead. Work resumes with an energy not felt in weeks. Sails are adjusted with zeal, ropes hauled without complaint. Men who had once groaned at every command now scramble to obey, eager to bring the ship closer. The officers bark orders with renewed authority, their voices carrying triumph rather than strain. Columbus stands at the centre of it all, surveying the scene with pride, already planning the moment when his boots will touch the sand. His triumph is complete, his authority restored. The men who whispered mutiny days ago now shout his name with reverence, their doubts drowned by the sight of green on the horizon. The relief spreads through your body too, though it feels different from theirs. Your knees weaken when you first see the trees, your chest loosens, your breath comes easier. The knot of fear that had lodged beneath your ribs begins to ease. For weeks the horizon had mocked you with sameness, but now it delivers a gift you had stopped believing in. Your eyes sting with tears you do not shed. Your hands tremble against the rail. Your heart pounds with the release of tension long held. For the first time in months, you feel hope without immediately cursing yourself for it. Columbus stands tall at the centre of the deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon, his voice carrying certainty again. The land you see is not simply land to him. It is triumph. It is proof that his vision was right, that his defiance of doubt was justified, that he will return to Spain not as a failed dreamer, but as a man anointed by history. Already, you can sense the story forming. Columbus will be immortalized as the hero who crossed an ocean and found new worlds. He will be remembered in books and statues, his name etched into maps, his figure painted with glory. For him, every hardship is transformed into legend. But for you, the truth is different. You are one of dozens of sailors whose names will not be written down, whose bodies have endured the same hunger, thirst, sickness, and fear without reward. The work of hauling ropes, scrubbing decks, and pumping bilge will be erased, invisible behind Columbus's shining narrative. The lash on men's backs, the sores on their gums, the hallucinations that filled their eyes with false horizons, none of this will matter once the tale is told. History will not care that men bled and vomited and wept while Columbus preached faith. It will not care that without those nameless hands, the sails would never have been trimmed. The decks never scrubbed, the barrels never lifted. You and the others will vanish into silence, buried beneath the weight of one man's fame. You think of the prayers whispered into the night, of the sobs that rose when men believed they were dying, of the bitter laughter that followed each false cry of tierra. None of that will survive in memory. The suffering will be washed away as surely as waves erase footprints in the sand. Chroniclers will write of courage and destiny, not of weevils in biscuits or bilge water soaking through clothes. They will paint the voyage as noble, not as monotonous, foul and degrading. They will say the men of Columbus bore themselves proudly into the unknown. Not that they cursed and muttered and nearly tore each other apart. Columbus will be praised for leadership, but you know the truth of his speeches, how they grew sharper, how they cracked under strain, how his eyes darted with doubt. You know the desperation that clung to his words, the way he punished dissent, not out of confidence, but fear. You saw the man as he is, not the figure he will become. And yet, none of that matters. The world does not remember flaws when it wants heroes. His hesitation, his anger, his arrogance will fade until only triumph remains. You will fade with them, though in a different way, not purified into legend, but dissolved entirely. The sailors cheer still, though their voices are cracked with fatigue, their bodies sagging. Some fall asleep against the rail, others collapse into hammocks, too weak to revel in their survival. Relief has come, but joy has not. You see in their faces the same realization you feel in your chest. Land changes nothing. Hunger still gnaws, sores still fester, exhaustion still drags at every limb. You are not enriched, not elevated, not transformed by discovery. You are merely alive, and even that feels like another burden to carry. The land is real, yes, but it does not erase the misery behind you or the misery still to come. When the story of this voyage is told, it will not mention the stink of rot that filled the air, or the rats that scurried across hammocks, or the cries of men doubled over with sickness. It will not mention how boredom stripped the mind bare, how fear coiled in every chest, how the storm nearly broke the fleet apart. It will not speak of the hallucinations that drove men to madness, or the despair that sank into your bones when the horizon refused to change. Those truths are too ordinary, too ugly. They will be forgotten because they do not serve the myth. You watch Columbus raise his hands, his voice strong, and you know he will carry this moment for the rest of his life. Kings will greet him, nobles will flatter him, priests will bless him. His name will live on. And you will step onto the same shore, but your footprints will vanish with the tide. No one will remember the sailor who hauled rope until his hands bled, or who choked down weevil-filled bread, or who coughed himself raw in the dark. No one will care about the nights you lay awake, wondering if Spain itself was only a dream. You are as invisible as the sweat that soaked into the ship's planks, absorbed and forgotten. The truth presses harder the longer you stare at the shoreline. You sailed into history, but history has no place for you. You endured misery in the name of glory, but the glory belongs to someone else. Your labour, your fear, your pain, all of it is fuel for another man's story, another man's crown, another man's eternal name. You do not even know if your family will hear of your survival, or if your fate will vanish into the sea's silence. You could vanish tomorrow, and the voyage would go on. The story would remain the same. The ship creaks as the wind fills the sails, carrying you closer to the coast. The men stir weakly, rubbing their eyes, whispering prayers, staring with longing at the green beyond. You lean against the rail, your arms heavy, your back aching, your eyes burning. You want to feel triumph, but all you feel is the same exhaustion that has followed you since the first rope was hauled. Your body is a vessel of aches, your spirit ground down to silence. Discovery means nothing to you now. It does not feed you. It does not heal you. It does not make you whole. You sailed west chasing glory, and you found only misery. You believed you might be part of history, and you discovered only how easily it forgets. You stare at the land rising on the horizon, solid and undeniable, and you feel nothing but weariness. Whatever waits beyond the shore belongs to kings and captains, not to you. You will remain a shadow, a body counted but not named, a voice drowned in the noise of triumph. The truth settles cold in your chest as the ship presses forward. You sailed into glory only to find misery, anonymity, and erasure. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story, where an ordinary sailor crossed an ocean under Columbus's command, only to come to the realization that history will remember the captain and forget the crew. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.